non-ready, anti-ready, unready. Rich Davey, President of XC Transit, just going to give a few remarks, and then obviously happy to take questions about the issue du jour or frankly anything. So first, just want to say the NTSB looks like they've completed the first step of their investigation, which is to provide us and the public with a factual rendition of the collision that occurred a few weeks back at 96th Street. You know, we continue to cooperate with the NTSB and appreciate all their expertise and professionalism they're bringing to bear. Suffice to say, we're still working with them to determine sort of the root cause and then more importantly recommendations to implement in the future to make sure that doesn't happen again. But as you will have read or will read, the factual rendition, which I think is at this point beyond dispute, something that we certainly generally agree with, is out. Happy at that. Maybe, I don't know, Tim, I'll just take questions at this point on that or anything else or that's on your mind.
Janet Angelis is CBS 2 right here.
Hi. It sounds like it came down to a communication error. Can you speak to that, how the person on the train wasn't able to get a hold of a supervisor?
So, yeah, we're still looking at that, right? So to not confuse the titles because they have titles and then exactly what they were doing on the train that moment is sort of different. So we had a person operating the car in the sixth car. It was the train supervisor, but literally the operator, and the person at the head end who was the eyes and ears, right? It's because you're operating it from the middle of the car, and obviously the brakes were not working. That's why we took it out of service. We're not exactly sure yet. Was it a communication issue between those two folks? Radios seem to be working, but we're investigating that as well. And then, we're also going to look at procedures and process. So this is not just about an individual or two individuals who, may or may not have followed process and protocol. We're going to take a look at this as well. I will say that this move, if you will, where we have to operate a car from the center and have a set of eyes at the front and the emergency brakes are disabled for whatever reason, is not uncommon. We think we do it about 10, 12 times a week, certainly last year. So, and we've done it without any fanfare. But again, we're going to look at everything, not only the individual actors, but are there, processes or procedures that we could improve to make sure this doesn't happen again.
All right, Mac Rosenberg's in the balcony up there. 10-10 wins, CBS 8-8. Mac.
So it looks like this had to do with the train that had been vandalized. The brakes were cut out, and the NTSB, they're going to look at procedures for operating bad order cars. Can you speak to that? Do you think that there needs to be clarification on what those procedures are?
There could be. I mean, look, an accident happened, so we need to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So, as I said, it's not just about individual conduct, but it's also about ensuring that we have the clearest processes, procedures, practices in place. As I said, I'm not, overly concerned because these moves happen frequently, but we're going to take a look at it and see, could we make, could we set that crew up for success in the future? Perhaps, we'll see.
Hang on a second. Samantha Liebman over there from New York 1. Go ahead, Sam.
So when the NTSB came, they sort of kind of chided you for not having data recorders and inward and outward facing cameras. I know you always talk about having more cameras than the casino, but
if you have your Rich Davey bingo card, Samantha has achieved it.
But there aren't inward-facing cameras in the cab or outward-facing cameras and data recorders on all of the trains. Is that something that you're going to consider? I know you said as you procure more newer rolling stock, you're going to get the data recorders, but what about the cameras facing inward in the cabs and also outward too, because I hear that can also help with track intrusions as well.
No, so great question, and that was something that the NTSB, I think the chair in particular, has made not an issue, but a hallmark for safety across the United States in transit. It's something we're taking a very serious look at. Certainly as we buy new cars, it will be standard issue for sure, both the event recorders and that camera technology. We're working with our partners in labor to ensure that their sort of privacy is also ensured. So making sure that if the cameras are inward facing, for example, that they're comfortable. The forward-facing cameras in this instance is interesting. I'm not sure that the forward-facing camera itself would have prevented the collision. It certainly would have given us better evidence as to what happened. But your point on the track intrusion is something that's very interesting to us, and we are putting out an RFP soon to see if we can get some forward-facing cameras that not only can provide evidence in this instance, but potentially better than the human eye, catch an intrusion, a person, a shopping cart, the things that end up on our tracks, unfortunately, from time to time, and we can, stop before. So that's something we're very interested in doing, and I think the NTSB has expressed support if we're able to do that.
All right, I inadvertently cut Mac off.
Oh.
Sorry about that. That's my fault.
It's because he's in the balcony.
Since the brakes had cut out on that train that was vandalized, and it seems to be some of the cause of this, would you be willing to partially blame the fact that the train had been vandalized as part of the cause here?
Well, look, I think that this is the challenge, right? A few things happen, right? So to your point, to start, the vandalism, that's the reason why the train was out of service to begin with, and ultimately, that's the reason why we couldn't get all the brakes to reset. There was one emergency brake the crew was unable to reset. It kept losing its charge, and thus the air dumping. And so that's why they had to take it out of service. And then to your point, that's why the emergency brakes in the first half of the car, the subway train, if you will, wasn't working. So, it's challenge, right? On the one hand, we have said from a risk perspective, it's important to have these brakes available for our customers who need them in a time of true emergency. On the other hand, we've seen active vandalism that usually is just an inconvenience to New Yorkers, but in this instance was, that sort of snowball that rolled and created this ultimate collision.
All right, we got a few off topics. Anybody else on the NTSB? Is that you? All right, Justin Laub over there, Mike. Justin Laub from NBC.
The NTSB report says that the flagger didn't hear the radio supervisor telling him to stop. Has the MTA confirmed that, and is there a way to confirm that the radio was down during the incident?
Yeah, obviously we're having the conversation with the two employees, so it could have been a radio issue, for example. There are multiple channels. It's another question, were they on the same channel, for example. So I think we need to, continue to look at those as possibilities. But as I said, we're going to look at both, not only the conduct of the individuals to see if there are improvements, but also are there processes, procedures, better radio procedures, for example, that we can employ in the future.
But is there any technological way to confirm that the radio was on or off, or that's just...
There isn't, no. I will confirm, I believe we have tested the radios to make sure they were both working, and that was true. But as to whether they were on or off at the time, no. Not that I'm aware of.
Anybody else on topic, and then we'll go off. Nolan Hicks on topic. Go ahead, Nolan.
Can you talk a little bit about...
Microphone behind you.
Oh, hi. Sorry. Can you talk a little bit about the decisions that were made by rail control to allow a train to pass back in front of a crippled train on the local track instead of protecting the local train as it made its way back to the yard? And can you talk about the decision that was made to send that local train, which was crippled, all the way back to 240th Street instead of using one of the closer yards, whether it was the pocket track at 103rd or the yard at 137?
Yeah, we'll obviously look at that, Nolan, too, to see if there were better decisions to be made in the future. I'm not going to second guess the Rail Control Center. Their goal was to get that train out of the way and to get it out of the way for rush hour. As I mentioned before, we make this move approximately a dozen times a week without any issue. But we're going to look at that to see, is there a better way to do this in the future?
All right. Anybody else on topic? All right. You? So
One of each.
There we go. Go ahead, Josh Einiger, WABC.
Thank you, Tim. Hey, Rich. The first question, this is sort of a big, kind of a bigger picture question. I wonder if you could talk about the...
I'm not a big picture guy.
Well, I'm not looking to get into your head, but what is the kind of impact on the agency, on the leadership, to be under the microscope of the NTSB? What is that like?
Well, look, it's the NTSB is a federal agency designed to help transit systems just perform better. And so, I've been in this business 20 years. It's not the first time that I've been part of an organization that's, had outside review. And look, you're only going to improve from it. So my expectation is the NTSB will, as they always do, have a professional report that will give us some recommendations and how to improve. So, and maybe nudge us in places like the cameras, as mentioned earlier, right? That's not a national requirement, but I think that maybe it's something it should be. And so we're going to look at that hard. And I think being the largest agency in the U.S., we can also help lead the nation as well. So Look, I don't see it as scrutiny per se. I see it as, they're doing their job to help us be better, and we welcome it.
All right, let's go off topic.
All right, now off topic. I wondered if you could address the report about the open gangway trains not being able to operate on certain tracks. Is
Sure.
this a mistake? How do you fix it?
Sure.
What is the impact?
So it's not a mistake. There's nothing to fix. And what's the impact is in a couple weeks or week or so, we won't give you the exact date. Customers, for the first time in New York City history, are going to be able to enjoy an open gangway car. No, we made a conscious decision. There's no design flaw in this. I think as folks were led to believe, it's a conscious choice that we made not to run new equipment on express tracks. On the A line between 125th and 159th Street, there's about a 7 or 8 minute gap where you're not at a station. For a new car class, we just thought it was more prudent to have that car stopping at stations more frequently. So this is not a mistake. It's not a design flaw. This is the first step in a testing. And, frankly, our A-train customers are getting a lot of R211s, so we thought we would give a little love to our C-train customers as well. I mean, you know me, I'm all about our customers. But there is no design flaw whatsoever. This was a purposeful choice.
All right, Steve, Nesson, did that clear everything up, or do you still have a question? From Gotham.
Yeah.
I know.
Hello. Thank you.
Hello.
I didn't write the story. My colleague did. But,
I know.
But to follow up on that, can you say very explicitly and clearly that the open gangway car physically could run on the A line as well as the C line?
It physically
Express and
could
local.
run on express tracks as well, yes. But we are choosing at this point to do local tracks as part of our testing.
Okay, Nolan Hicks apparently needs.
There's no it's wider or smaller, it was misdesigned, none of that. It is literally a choice we've made.
So why is running it on the local track the prudent choice?
As I said, because of the distance between stations, right? So if there are issues, if there was, a fire to break out, or, you could sit here all day and speculate about what could happen, but having a train pulling into stations on a more frequent basis is just how we want to test this equipment.
Is it a code consideration then? Is there something that's preventing it from being signed off for running on the long stretches?
No.
All right.
There is no code consideration at all. This is a choice we have a gangway task force within New York City Transit, and this is what we're comfortable with. So,
and these trains run on these sorts of stretches in other places in the world, so why not just give them the old try? Like, I don't understand the why.
well, I'll give you the why again, which is we're prudently rolling this out. Are they never going to run on express track? No, we haven't said that. We haven't run them yet in passenger service. So, frankly, I have the opposite reaction, which is what's the hullabaloo? We're rolling this out. We are the first system in the U.S. to have open gangway. We're going to try it on the C train first.
All right, Ben Brockfield from AM New York, right over there.
Hey, Rich.
Hey, Ben.
So I want to follow up on the emergency brake line of inquiry.
Sure.
Jano said a couple weeks ago after the derailment that most emergency brake pulls are caused by vandalism, and most of them. If you look at that little sign next to the emergency brake, it says in most instances you shouldn't pull it.
Right.
Is there any consideration of making it harder to pull or like restricting access to the emergency brake?
I think we definitely have consideration as being a little clearer about what the consequences of pulling that emergency brake is, right? So I don't think that it's clear. It might say, do not do this or whatnot, as opposed to saying, look, you're either inconveniencing New Yorkers or, frankly, could we prosecute you for interfering, with an in-revenue train, as an example. I think that's what we're looking at, to be clear about what the consequences are. To me, it's a trade-off for these instances where folks are pulling it for whatever reason, their kicks. But there have been instances where customers have pulled that emergency cord in a true emergency. We want to give them, that opportunity still. So there hasn't been a real conversation internally that we should cut those all off, because what I do worry about is those legitimate instances where a customer might need to pull that emergency cord to get attention for a medical issue or whatever else might be happening.
And I also wanted to ask a question about the F train in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Specifically, those bolts on the what was it, on the truck of the or
He's asking you, I think. I don't know.
Well, whatever was called. You know.
He's asking the guy who's on strike today.
You know the bolts I'm talking about.
I do.
Like,
I
is
do.
there are
See, he did get into my head. Do you see that?
is,
All right, here, I'll make it easy for you.
Yeah.
What do we know about the derailment?
Yeah, well,
How's that?
well, also,
I'll
are the bolts on other trains where those would be? Are those being inspected throughout the system?
So maybe I'll take a step back, and then someone might have a follow-up question. So what do we know about the F train derailment? We know two things. One is that there was a rail lack of conformity, or non-conformity as we call it, which we knew at the time. We actually talked about that at the conference a couple weeks ago. And there was this bolt issue on the truck. Independent of one another would not have caused the derailment. But together, that is what we believe caused the derailment. So the track nonconformity had been known for 18 months. We were inspecting it on a regular basis. No issues with that nonconformity. In fact, as you know, half the train made it over that piece of rail before it derailed. It was that piece of truck that didn't. We didn't find the 4 bolts. We're not sure if the 4 bolts were missing. A couple were loose. But the bottom line is we've inspected the entire 2 car classes that have these bolts, about 1,800 cars. We inspected 49,968 bolts, and we found 59,968 bolts. We found 3 that were loose, not on the same truck. So this is not a systemic issue in the fleet. And on the flip side, the rail condition, we know, because we have excellent data, that there are there were 103 of these same rail conditions out there, which require monitoring but not immediate repair. We inspected all 103 of those after the incident, found that none of them had gotten worse. Nonetheless, as a precaution, we've gone out and fixed 82 of those. We have 21 left, which will get done by the end of February. So on that one, I just want to say, because I have so much detail, I have tremendous confidence in the safety of our system, and frankly, tremendous confidence that folks who have come before me invested a lot of time and energy to get that kind of data. Without disparaging any of my other brother or sister properties in the U.S., I think we have the strongest EAM system in America, and as a result, we're able to talk confidently the system is safe.
All right, 2 more. Kevin Duggan right there, Streets blog over there.
Hey, Rich, how's it going?
Good.
I have 2 sets of questions about illegal parking getting in the way of your riders. First one is...
I hate it.
Great. Accessoride. There are specific Accessoride drop-off and pick-up
Yes.
zones with signs.
Yes.
You're not supposed to park in them unless you're Accessoride.
Yes.
There's one right outside the Brooklyn Center for Independence, which has, a lot of people coming in with wheelchairs, other mobility users. Constantly blocked for years. People that work there have tried to work with the precinct. Trying to just keep it clear, and it's like the people that park in there also have like police placards, so it's coming from within the house. Same thing happening outside the mayor's office for disability, also Accessoride zone, blocked by a vehicle with a city plate. What can the MTA do about this? I know it's a city enforcement issue, but what can you guys do about this? And do you have any faith in the city that they'll be able to keep this clear for your Accessoride riders?
Sure. So what can we do about it? I can continue to be angry about this, because if you're not a bus, don't get in a bus lane. If you're not an Accessoride vehicle or an e-hail vehicle, get out of Accessoride parking or pickup or drop-off. Obviously, we have a couple in front of our building up at 2 Broadway as well. And it's even more outrageous because, for folks who are in our Accessoride vehicles, clearly have a disability, clearly have mobility challenges, and they more probably than any other New Yorker need that space to be able to get in and out, to get to work, to get to that center, as you mentioned. I do have faith in the city. The city NYPD joined us last month and have created a task force on their own to go out and go out and ticket folks. I'm told, I got a briefing this morning, that since the task force was put in place, which was early December, they've written over 7,000 tickets. You have to confirm that with NYPD, but they're putting their full weight behind making sure that bus lanes, and I would assume these, the Accessoride spots are not blocked. But it frustrates the hell out of me that we have to continue to have this conversation. There are New Yorkers who need to get around, and in this instance, need the services we're providing, and that includes that space to get in and out of our vehicle.
And then my follow-up is related, and this probably frustrates you a lot as well,
Oh,
is
once again,
outside
getting in my head. Right.
Transit Authority on Livingston Street, the
Yep.
bus lane.
Yep.
DOT installed a busway just south of your offices there.
Yes.
Didn't go in front of your offices. I stopped by there a couple of times over the last week. Every time there's an MTA branded vehicle in the bus lane, along with several vehicles with MTA vests in the dash. You know, what can you guys do about this? I mean, I know you sent out a memo before the busway opened.
Yeah.
It seems like the message hasn't quite arrived.
Well, then I'll be out there personally towing and ticketing. That's the bottom line. I think you covered that first day, and we asked NYP to be out towing, which they did, and I appreciated. If our employees aren't getting the message, then I'll have to reinforce it. The only way that an MTA vehicle, there are two exceptions that I've given, two exceptions. One is a bona fide emergency, and I'm not aware of any emergencies in front of Livingston. Or two is our mobile wash teams who are out at 2 and 3 in the morning that need access to fire hydrants in order to pump. That's it. That is it. And employees are responsible to pay the tickets themselves. I've had a few sob stories, and I've been clear. Get out of the bus lane. Get out of the bus lane. Unless you're a bus operator driving a bus, no problem.
All right, we're going to close it out. Back to Josh Einiger. One more follow-up.
I just had a follow up to the Brooklyn derailment because you referenced a track condition, and I know you addressed this a couple weeks ago, but
Sure.
could you just be a little bit more in layman's terms? What are we talking
Sure.
about? And is it the same specific issue with all 100 and some odd cases? And who makes the decision that something can be deferred and for how long?
Sure. So it was a mismatch of the rail, 1/8 of an inch or even less. So literally, it was just off. So for the layman, just off ever so slightly, right? Our track inspectors, of which we have hundreds out in the system every day. So every piece of track, revenue track, is walked at least twice a week. That actual track, piece of track had been walked the night before with a track walker and a supervisor who was performing QA, QC, which is why we feel even more confident that it hadn't been degraded. And then we have what's called a track geometry car that goes out at least twice a year. So to ensure that, if there are anomalies in the rail that the human eye can't see, we're doing that testing as well. So, we're going to look to see if there are other technologies that we can bring to bear. I mean, the human eye is, as good as the human eye. But in this instance, I think our track team had it down. It was just because of this wheel and these two issues together caused it. So do I call it dumb luck? Perhaps, but you know what? In my watch, you can't even have dumb luck, so we're going to see if we're going to address it.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I want to show it's just me, just in case you thought you missed it.